To everybody, just to kind of introduce someone who probably doesn't need introduction. For a lot of you who've been following the Depp case, Depp versus Heard. This is, I like to call her the lady from LegalBytes. Your name is Alita, right? I happened to come across your channel right before the trial started. And basically what I wanted to do for our audience is give you a forum where you can talk about whatever you want, and whether it's related to Depp versus Heard or other cases. And also, I think our audience would love to hear more about you. So why don't we start off by telling our audience how you got interested in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing and what this journey has been like for you so far.
Yeah. So for me, I initially had someone like tag me on Twitter, something about it was around the time that Judge Oscarati decided that she was going to allow cameras in the courtroom. And someone tagged me on Twitter and was like, hey, tag me and Nick Rekieta, I think of Rekieta Law. The both of us was like, hey, like, are you going to live stream this trial? Because the judge is allowing cameras in the courtroom. And I was like, wait, what? Like, I hadn't even followed the case at that point. Like I vaguely remembered there being some controversy back in like 2016 about a DV situation, but like there was so much that I hadn't heard about in so long because it just wasn't being reported, that it like completely blindsided me that there even was this trial that was coming up. So I just like immediately started to go in and try to learn as much as I could about the case. And the more I learned about it, the more fascinating it was. And not just like obviously the fact that there's celebrities involved, that's always a bit interesting, especially since I cover a lot of pop culture and stuff on my channel anyway. Like that's the kind of stuff that I prefer to do.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, like pop culture.
That's great.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually kind of where I started, was like one of my first videos that really got any kind of attention was analyzing the legality of someone's actions in a video game. So, but analyzing the law from a current event / pop culture kind of perspective has always been kind of one of my interests. So when this trial came about, there's obviously that pop culture angle, but then also the broader social context of like the Me Too movement and what this means for how far the Me Too movement kind of swung to one side, and what this means maybe culturally about what we're learning about certain aspects of how far that movement went, certain voices that were brought in. I mean, anyone who has now watched the trial, I think, understands, at least I shouldn't say everyone, but the vast majority of people that I have heard from that actually watched the trial have decided that the verdict was properly found in favor of Johnny Depp, right? That Amber Heard is not a proper spokesperson for the Me Too movement. She is not a proper spokesperson for DV survivors. And that if anything, what if anything, right, has become a big question throughout this trial, thanks to one of the attorneys. But like if anything, Johnny Depp is the one who's more a proper spokesperson for DV survivors, right?
Absolutely.
So all of those like social cultural elements, and then on top of that, seeing this frustration from people in the Justice for Johnny Depp community who have a strong distrust of the mainstream media, and a distrust in them in telling the story properly as it's actually unfolding, then all of those elements together were very, very interesting to me. And the last one in particular is very important to me because I've seen for myself in covering other cases just how much the reporting on a particular case can diverge from what actually happened in the trial itself.
Wow. Yes.
So yeah. So if I mean, like, if nothing else, I was just interested for my own purposes to actually follow the trial myself on a daily basis, and to give my own commentary, whatever I can give for people that would help them get some value out of that commentary to understand the trial and whatnot. And thankfully I had a bunch of people that were interested in hopping on with me and adding their areas of expertise and their their years of experience as attorneys, or, I had Nurse Liz on, then I had Dr. Honda, I had Dr. Tracy on, two psychologists, I had Spidey, the behavioral arts, he, a behavioral analyst there. And so it ended up being like a really, really great stream to have a bunch of people come in. And then of course, people like you, like people that have been following the case factually for such a long time, to be like, when I would be like, okay, like I've been researching this for maybe about a month before trial began, but that is nothing in comparison to like everyone else that's like been in this Justice for Johnny Depp community. Like that's a raindrop in the ocean in comparison to the amount of time and expense that so many other people have put into this. So it was so helpful to have like you and Andrea also coming onto the channel. And also, from time to time I had Real Laura B, I had Jax, I had Stevie J Raw and Tug both on my channel, like going into the trial to kind of learn from them and learn, about the facts from them. So the more I dug into the case, the more interesting it was to me, and the more important it was to me too. And that's why I decided to do recaps on top of it too, because I knew that there were plenty of people who couldn't afford to sit and watch a trial every single day for 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, what have you, because they've got work, they've got kids, they've got all kinds of important responsibilities. So recaps from someone who's actually watching the trial is probably helpful, rather than having to rely on headlines that are maybe written partially accurately, maybe.
I thought you were about to say that we're maybe a little biased. I was gonna say maybe. I think that was also eloquently put, honestly, and it's so nice. I have to say too, as someone who has only watched your live streaming of the trial, it's really interesting to hear you just reflecting on things in retrospect. And I think that, and some of those people that you recognized earlier who have been on it longer than I have, like you mentioned, like Brian and Umbrella Guy and Laura B and some of the others. I really respect people like that who were on this story when it wasn't a popular narrative, or when there was no one really standing up for the truth and for Johnny Depp at that point. Yes. But also, I really appreciate though people like you who were not familiar with this really until recently, but very quickly had the good sense, had the intelligence to recognize, I think, very quickly what the truth was. And I really appreciated that, because if it hadn't been for people like you and Rakita and and some of the others that you've had on your show, it would just be the mainstream media's narrative, and we've seen what the narrative is, what they've chosen. Yeah. And I'm just curious, you have, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was you, as you mentioned, you were kind of a subject of this, or at least you were a part of this media critique of apparently this misogynist treatment of Amber Heard. I'm just curious, tell our audience, those who aren't familiar, can you kind of summarize? I know it's a pain, but can you kind of summarize what's happened the last week with you and the media about it?
I like to refer to it as the Twitter NATO that I may have sparked. But it was, so the Washington Post came out with an article about basically this commentary that has come out about the trial. And it was put out by a journalist named Taylor Lorenz. And the basic gist of the article is the people that really won from this trial are the content creators, people that decided to pivot, jump onto the train, so to speak, of this Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial, and saying that they're just clout chasing. They're trying to raise their subscribers, searching for likes, trying to make money. And it talks about myself and that Umbrella Guy. And there are several issues that I had with it. Number one, it mentions me by my name as an influencer. It doesn't mention the name of my channel. It doesn't mention the fact that I'm a lawyer. It doesn't mention the fact that I cover law on my channel always, and always have and always will. And the reason why I say about my channel name is not because I want a shout out, which is, it's nice to get a shout out, even when you're getting shade thrown at you.
No,
but like, but really just because even just the name of my channel is an indication that I cover law, right? Like it kind of makes sense for a lawyer to cover a trial. You know, regardless of whether I decided to cover it before it became a global phenomenon or after it became a global phenomenon, it kind of makes sense. I didn't jump from, you know, underwater basket weaving, you know, how to instruct on that kind of stuff, to suddenly covering the Depp v. Heard trial. You know, my stuff has included, I've talked about Manson, I've talked about Cardi B's defamation case. I've talked about, you know, I had talked about this case before it went to trial.
Yeah,
I analyzed
your channel and can see that you've been doing all kinds of stuff up to this point. And why would you not cover? There would be something weird if you did not cover this case. It's like the trial so far. It's the trial of the century. It might be eclipsed, but it's the trial of the century so far. So
I would agree. I would definitely agree. And the thing is, so, you know, there's that part that they conveniently leave out because they go through like K-pop people and makeup artists and all kinds of people that decided to jump on it to make content to react to a lot of this stuff. And so they refer to other people's backgrounds, but they don't refer to mine because that would not support their narrative that like these are just random people who shouldn't be commenting on this trial, right? That these are like the subtext of it is this is dangerous because, you know, who are these people that are covering this trial? They're not journalists. They don't subscribe to journalistic norms and ethics. And so, you know, therefore there's a risk of misinformation. It's dangerous. Like that's basically like the gist that like you should be taking away from this article. So it doesn't really support the narrative to say, oh, but one of these is actually a licensed attorney who is a litigator and who has, you know, experience talking about these kinds of matters before, who has actually been on commentary live streams for trials in the past. You know, maybe not on my channel, but on other folks' channels. I mean, specifically, mostly on Recato Law, but also, you know, other hearings and stuff like you know, the Justice Smollett sentencing hearing was on Nate the Lawyer's channel, and also Ahmaud Arbery. He also hosted the trial stream of that one as well. So I just so there was that part that bugged me because it was technically not a lie, but it seemed like possibly a strategic omission. Number two, they referenced another article that had previously been published about me in the second week of the trial from Business Insider that was written by an author who took like a half an hour to sit down with me. Like I had a great conversation with him. We hit it off really well. And the article was like, it was actually kind of a nice puff piece, to be honest. So this author in the Washington Post takes that prior article, which is now about a month old.
Okay.
And uses that, and in my opinion, actually misuses that prior article as well, basically to say that they said that I pivoted. Because when she talks about how she's like, you know, that I made $5,000 in the first week after pivoting my content to cover the Depp v. Heard trial, according to this article by Business Insider. And so I was like, that's not exactly accurate. And you're misusing the words of this other author, because that's not what he said, right? Like he never used the word pivot. He never indicated any kind of a pivot.
They were misquoting him and also basically misquoting you too. So
wow. Yes, exactly.
Because they were so intent on pushing a narrative of what was their thesis overall for their
that basically these content creators on YouTube and TikTok are just clout chasing. And so this particular paragraph where I show up, it's me and that umbrella guy. And it's talking about how I made money and he made money. And the figure that they quoted, he said was outside the figure that was in reality. Because, well, she also quoted his Social Blade, which, number one, Social Blade is rarely accurate. How can you use that as a, what are you talking about? And anyway, she also said, you know, about both of us in the same paragraph that she had reached out for comment, and that both of us declined to comment. So that's when I tweeted out the article. It was maybe like a half an hour after it was published or something like that. I don't know. It was not long, because somebody had tagged me in a tweet about it and said, like, you should check out this article. And I was like, huh, okay. So when I noticed that, I tweeted out and I was like, I just double checked my email. Like I searched for her first name, last name, Washington Post. I got no request for media outreach in my email. And that's typically the way that folks have reached out to me, because I've gotten other media requests that I either was able to or wasn't able to respond to in time. So anyhow, then she reaches out to me on Twitter via direct message. And, you know, says like, hey, like, I'm sorry, we got our wires crossed. And I'm a little bit ticked off at this point, because I'm like, you already have misrepresented my words and whatnot. But, you know, I gave her a little bit of a response that was maybe a little bit of a spicy response, coming from my litigation background. But basically saying, I think you are being disingenuous. I think maybe how that can how the TLDR of that can.
Gotcha. And then what happened? Did you hear back again, or what?
Yeah, and she had a couple tweets after that, or a couple DMs after that, and then, you know, and later on, I looked over at my Instagram DMs and I saw that like 10 minutes after she had DM'd me on Twitter, she had also DM'd me on Instagram, but that was after the Twitter DM, which was after my initial tweet.
Oh my gosh. Trying to make it look like basically trying to make it look like she hadn't done what she did or whatever. And she hadn't failed.
And the timing of it is important because of what later transpires, because of what the Washington Post decided to do to edit this article. First, they tried to stealth edit that parenthetical out, the parenthetical about her reaching out to me and Tug. And so the next morning, Rick Hogue over at Hogue Law was, you know, he's got his new thing in the mornings is to do hangouts and headlines, where he's talking about headlines, you know, headlines in the media about law, et cetera. Right now, of course, it's a lot of the response to the Depp trial. And so the fact that there's this dust up that's forming around someone that he knows, like a friend of his, you know, he's like, well, of course I'm going to cover this one. So he invited me on, and he invited her on too. But I was like, yeah, of course I'll be there. So I joined in, like, you know, after he had already gotten going for about 30 minutes. So while he was going through it, he was looking for the parenthetical statement on like the online version. He was like, it's missing. Interesting. Is there a note at the top or the bottom about like this having been, oh no, there isn't. Okay. That's weird. And that's one of the reasons why I took a screenshot with my tweet was because I had a feeling that something like that could happen. So I took a screenshot just to kind of to document it along with everything. And so then there was an editor's note that was added to it saying, okay, like, here's the corrections, you know, like there was an improper, like, you know, editing where we took out this thing, and that was not according to our policies. And also, by the way, you know, like the things that we said about the what was I going to say about the, you know, reaching out to them was not accurate, you know, but they have declined to comment or whatever. And, you know, I actually probably would have been okay with it, even with that decline to comment part being technically wrong, because I never said I wouldn't comment. In fact, I gave plenty of commentary openly on Twitter, as did Tug. Right. You know, like it may not have been through a DM or through a phone conversation, but we certainly were giving our comments. Right. Just not the ones that she wanted to include.
Exactly.
So, you know, but then like, but I mean, otherwise I would have been like, okay, I'll leave it. But then I later went back and I saw that they had updated the editor's note again, this time to say, well, actually, we didn't reach out to Tug ahead of time, but, you know, but we did reach out to Alita Majeka ahead of time through Instagram, and she declined to comment, and we or something like that. And then we, you know, we continued to reach out to her through social media afterwards, after publishing. And we reached out to that umbrella guy afterwards as well, and she declined to comment, and he could not be reached for comment. So I was like, this is easily verifiable and impeachable information here.
So that was all wrong. Yes. Is that?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, my Lord.
Yeah. And then I still responded. I retweeted out again that I was like, with a photo of a screenshot of the editor's note, highlighting the part where it says that she reached out to me ahead of time through Instagram DM. And I was like, this is not correct. This is still not correct. Like, why did you add this in here? Because this is more incorrect than the last version.
Really?
So, and there haven't been any updates since then. And Taylor Lorenz has come out and tweeted a bit about what happened, I guess. And then there was a lot of backlash to her tweets because a lot of people are taking that as it's the editor's fault. It's not my fault. And also then she was like turning it into like a weirdly political issue, because I guess a lot of the people that were picking this up were more right-leaning,
Right.
journalism outlets and whatnot, like
Right.
National Review, Fox News, Daily Caller, that kind of stuff. So, so she was saying that this is like a smear campaign by conservative outlets and radicalized influencers or something like that. So I was like, I don't know if is she counting me with the radicalized influencers? Because she's not counting me as a lawyer still. Like, she still has yet to recognize me as a lawyer, but she calls me an influencer. So am I included in that? I don't really know. But
this is what they like to do. And I've experienced this for a while since I started making YouTube videos. Is they will find videos that I've done that are on more controversial topics, and I'm not going to advertise it here because that's not what we're talking about right now. But there are some positions I have that are a little more controversial. And I've said before that I consider myself a centrist, but I have views on both sides of the aisle, right? But what they do is my critics have done this, and Amber Heard supporters, is they'll find my most controversial videos, and then they'll distort whatever I say, in those videos, distort my views. And so then what it ends up coming out as, oh, she's a right-wing extremist or whatever, when I'm totally not that, right? And
yeah.
so you're getting that just on a bigger scale. It's like they can't get you on the facts because your reporting is, and your analysis is excellent, and they can't get you on the facts either because they screwed up and they've had to issue multiple corrections. It is such egg on their faces. It's so embarrassing to them. So yeah, they're like lashing out. Oh, she's a right winger or whatever. They're right wingers, these Depp supporters. It's really enraging, honestly.
Which is so not the case, right? Like the Justice for Johnny Depp community is
No.
so politically diverse. I've got people in my chat saying, yeah, I'm a socialist. And I'm like, okay.
Right. Yes.
And they're like, and I support Johnny Depp. Like, okay, cool. Like I love the fact that my audience is politically diverse. I love it because I would prefer, like I would prefer to have people come in and come from their various perspectives and talk about the law in a way so that we can kind of like remove a lot of those tribalistic sort of tendencies or natures, and just look at this as like, okay, we are individuals that are analyzing what we think should be, and politics can inform that. Of course, your political ideology absolutely can inform that. But, to the extent that you can strip that away and think critically about what it is that is in front of you without expanding that into a grander meaning, just take the case that's in front of you, apply the facts to the law, and say, like, is this correct? Like, there's a beautiful simplicity in being able to do that you don't have to worry about the rest of the fallout from everything else. And so I think that is one of the things that the media is sort of contending with right now. Is that a lot of people are starting to do that. Like the fact that this is a very politically diverse community that has come together to look at this case and say, Amber Heard does not represent the Me Too movement because she's wrong and she's a liar, is a very powerful thing that people like Taylor Lorenz, who wanted to pin all of this cascade of anger that is coming her way over this whole dust up. She's trying to characterize people in that respect. And there are so many people that are looking at this after having already had this frustration about the media in general, about the Depp case, that they are looking at that and saying, are you trying to gaslight me? Because this is not a political issue. Like what does politics even have to do with what's going on right now? Like, this doesn't make any sense.
That's exactly right. And, I posted something on my Twitter today just to say, you know, just understand that what the media are doing right now, they do this. They do this with everything, with all kinds of things,
But
right?
like, there are those that haven't been following it. And so then they hear those kinds of arguments that are linking these things together, and they get alarmed and they get worried and they say like, oh my God, like if that's the case, then we have to be pro Amber Heard, like that is something that can happen with a lot of people. And that's why again, that's one of the reasons why it was so important to me to live stream this trial and to do all of those recaps.